English Wines, Part 1. To make wines of English grapes. When the vines are well grown, so as to bring full clusters, be careful to disencumber them of some part of their leaves, that too much shade the grapes, but not so much in a hot season, as that the sun may too swiftly draw away their moisture and wither them. Stay not till they are all ripe at once, for then some will be overripe or burst, or inclined to rot before the underlings are come to perfection. But every 2 or 3 days pick off the choice and ripest grapes, and spread them in dry shady places sideways, that they contract not a heat and must, by which means those that remain on the clusters, having more juice to nourish them, will grow bigger, or be sooner ripe. And when you have got a sufficient quantity, put them into an open vessel, and bruise them well with your hands. Or, if the quantity be too large, gently press them with a flat wooden beater, that is, a thick board fastened at the end of a staff. For treading them with the feet, as practised in France and other countries, is a very slovenly way. Take care you break the stones as little as possible, for that will make the wine have a bitterish twang. Having bruised the grapes well, so that they are become pulp or mash, provide a tap at the bottom of your cask. Tie a haircloth over your faucet, and let out that which will run voluntarily of itself as the best wine. Then take out the pulp and gently press it by degrees in a cider press, till the liquor is sufficiently drained out. Provide a new cask, well seasoned, and add with a lighted rag dipped in brimstone, till it becomes dry. Pour the liquor in through a sieve funnel to stop the dregs, and let it stand with only a pebble stone lightly laid on the bunghole to ferment and refine itself 10 or 12 days. Then draw it gently off into another cask, well seasoned, that the lees or dregs may remain in the first cask, and stop it no other way than before, till it has quite passed over its ferment, which you may know by its coolness and pleasant taste. And thus, of ordinary white grapes you may make a good sort of white wine. Of the red grapes, claret, and if it should want colour, heighten it with a little Brazil, boiled in about a quart of it, and strained very clear. The white grapes, not too ripe, give a good Rhenish taste, and are wonderfully cooling. There is a sort of muscadel grapes growing in many parts of England which may be brought, by the help of a little loaf sugar to feed on, to produce a curious sweet wine, little differing from Canary, and altogether as wholesome and pleasant. If the wine requires racking, the best time to do it is when the wind is in the north and the weather temperate and clear, in the increase of the moon, and when she is underneath the earth, and not in her full height. If the wine ropes, take a coarse linen cloth, and when you have set the cask abroach, set it before the bore, and put in the linen, and rack it in a dry cask. Put in 5 or 6 ounces of alum in powder, and shake them so that they may mix well. On settling, it will be fined down, and become very clear and pleasant wine. To make gooseberry wine. Take gooseberries just beginning to turn ripe, not those that are quite ripe. Bruise them as well as you did the grapes, but not so as to break their stones. Then pour to every 8 pounds of pulp a gallon of clear spring water, or rather their own distilled water made in a cold still, and let them stand in the vessel covered in a cool place 24 hours. Then put them into a strong canvas or hair bag and press out all the juice that will run from them, and to every quart of it put 12 ounces of loaf or other fine sugar, stirring it till it be thoroughly melted. Then put it into a well-seasoned cask and set it in a cool place. When it has purged and settled, about 20 or 30 days, fill the vessel full and bung it down close, that as little air as possible may come at it. When it is well wrought and settled, then is your time to draw it off into smaller casks or bottles, keeping them in cool places, for there is nothing damages any sort of wines more than heat. Another way to make gooseberry wine. When the weather is dry, gather your gooseberries about the time they are half ripe. Pick them clean and put the quantity of a peck in a convenient vessel and bruise them with a piece of wood, taking as much care as possible to keep the seeds whole. When you have done this, put the pulp into a canvas or hair bag and press out all the juice. Add to every gallon of gooseberries and about 3 pounds of fine loaf sugar. Mix it all together by stirring it with a stick, and as soon as the sugar is quite dissolved, pour it into a convenient cask, that it will hold it exactly, and according to the quantity, let it stand. That is, if about 8 or 9 gallons, it will take a fortnight; if 20 gallons, 40 days, and so in proportion, taking care the place you set it in be cool. After standing the proper time, draw it off from the lees and put it into another sweet vessel of equal size, or into the same, after pouring the lees out and making it clean. Let a cask of 10 or 12 gallons stand about 3 months, and 20 gallons 5 months, after which it will be fit for bottling off. It is a cooling drink, taken with great success in all hot diseases as fevers, smallpox, and the hot fit of the ague. It stops laxation, is good in the bloody flux, cools the heat of the liver and stomach, stops bleeding, and mitigates inflammations. It wonderfully abates flushings and redness of the face after hard drinking or the like. Provokes urine and is good against the stone, but those that are of a very phlegmatic constitution should not make use of it. To make currant wine. Take 4 gallons of cooling spring or conduit water. Let it gently simmer over a moderate fire, scum it well, and stir into it 8 pounds of the best virgin honey. When that is thoroughly dissolved, take off the water and stir it well about to raise the scum, which take clean off and cool. When it is thus prepared, press out the like quantity of juice of red currants moderately ripe, without any green ones among them, which being well strained, mix it well with the water and honey, put them in a cask or large earthen vessel, and let them stand upon the ferment 24 hours. To every gallon add 2 pounds of loaf or other fine sugar. Stir them well to raise the scum, and when well settled, take it off and add half an ounce of cream of tartar with a little fine flour and the whites of 2 or 3 eggs, which will refine it. When it is well settled and clear, draw it off into a small vessel or bottle it up, keeping it in a cool place. Of white currants, a wine may be made after the same manner, that will equal in strength and pleasantness many sorts of white wine. Another way to make currant wine. After gathering the currants, which must be done when the weather is dry and they are full ripe, strip them carefully from the stalk so as not to bruise them with your fingers. Put them into a pan and bruise them with a wooden pestle. Then let it stand about 24 hours, according to the quantity, after which strain it through a sieve. Add 3 pounds of fine powder sugar to every 4 quarts of the liquor, and then shaking or stirring it well, fill your vessel and put about a quart of good brandy to every 6 or 7 gallons. As soon as it is fine, which will be in 4 or 5 weeks, bottle it off. If it should not prove quite clear, draw it off into another vessel and let it stand about 10 days, and then bottle it off. These wines allay the burning eagerness of thirst, are cooling in fevers, resist putrefaction, stay vomiting, corroborate the heart, and fortify the stomach. Currant wine is drank with success by those that have the fits of the mother. It diverts epilepsy and is very useful in many complaints incident to the female sex. To make raisin wine. To 200 weight of raisins, put about 44 gallons of water wine measure. Stir it up well 3 or 4 times a day. Let it stand about 3 weeks, then take it off the raisins and tun it up. When you put it into the cask, add about 2 quarts of brandy to it, which will keep it from fretting. Let it stand about 10 or 12 months, then draw it off from the lees, rinse your cask and put it in again. Then fine it down with 3 ounces of isinglass and 1/4 pound of sugar candy dissolved in some of the wine. There are many ways used to retrieve this wine, if it should chance to turn sour, which seldom happens if properly made. In this case, the most successful method is to replenish it with a farther addition of raisins. Another way to make raisin wine. Put 200 weight of raisins with the stalks into a hogshead and fill it almost with spring water. Let it steep about 12 days, frequently stirring them about, and after pouring the juice off, dress the raisins. The liquor should then be put together in a very clean vessel that will exactly contain it. It will hiss or sing for some time, during which it should not be stirred. But when the noise ceases, it must be stopped close and stand for about 6 or 7 months. And then, if you peg it, and it proves fine and clear, rack it off into another vessel of the same size. Stop it up and let it remain 12 or 14 weeks longer, then bottle it off. The best way, when you use it, is to take a decanter and rack it off. The virtues of raisin wine are too well known to require a particular description. There are few constitutions but what it will agree with. It strengthens and comforts the heart, revives the faded spirits, and conduces greatly to health if used with moderation. To make raspberry wine the English way. Take what quantity you please of red raspberries when they are nearly ripe, for if they grow overripe they will lose much of their pleasant scent. And after clearing the husks and stalks from them, soak them in the like quantity of fair water that has been boiled and sweetened with fine loaf sugar, 1.5 pounds to a gallon. When they are well soaked, about 12 hours, take them out, put them into a fine linen pressing bag, press out the juice into the water, then boil them up together over a gentle fire, and scum them well twice or thrice. Take off the vessel and let the liquor cool, and when the scum arises, take off all that you can, and pour off the liquor into a well seasoned cask or earthen vessel. Then boil an ounce of mace quite down, if possible, in a pint of white wine, till a third part of the wine be consumed. Strain it and add it to the liquor. Let it settle 2 days, and when it is well settled and fermented, draw it off into a cask or bottles and keep it in a cool place. To make raspberry wine the French way. Steep 2 gallons of raspberries in a gallon of sack, 24 hours. Then strain them and put to them 3/4 pound of raisins of the sun, well stoned, and let them continue 4 or 5 days, sometimes stirring them well. Then pour it off gently that the clearest may be taken away and only the dregs and settlings remain, and bottle that up you pour off. If you find it not sweet enough for the palate, you may add some sugar. About ½ pound to a gallon will be sufficient. Keep it in a cool place. Another way to make raspberry wine the French way. Gather the raspberries quite dry, when ripe, and bruise them. Strain them through a woolen bag into a jar. Put to it about 1 pound of the best double refined sugar. Mix the whole well together and stop it close. Pour it off as clear as possible after it has stood 4 days. The common method is to put 2 quarts of white wine to 1 quart of the raspberry juice, but that is too much, as it overpowers the rich flavour of the fruit. 3 pints will be enough. Bottle it off and it will be fit to drink in 10 days. The juice mixed with brandy is a fine dram. Put about 2 quarts of brandy to 3 quarts of raspberry juice, and it will drink well in 10 days. Another way to make raspberry wine the French way. Your raspberries must be dry, full ripe, and used just after they are gathered, in order to preserve their flavour. To every quart of fruit put 3 pounds of fine powder sugar and a little better than a gallon of clear water. Stir it 5 or 6 times a day to mix the whole well together, and let it ferment for 3 or 4 days. Put it in your cask, and for every gallon put in 2 whole eggs, taking care they are not broke in putting it. It must stand at least 3 months before you bottle it. Your water should be of a good flavour, for in the choice of that principally depends the making of good or bad tasted wines. These wines, either way, are a great cordial. They cleanse the blood, prevent pestilential air, comfort the heart, ease pains in the stomach, dispel gross vapours from the brain, cause a free breathing by removing obstructions from the lungs, and are successfully taken in apoplexies. To make mulberry wine. Take mulberries when they are just changed from their redness to shining black. Gather them on a dry day when the sun has taken off the dew. Spread them thinly on a fine cloth on a floor or table for 24 hours, and boil up a gallon of water to each gallon of juice you can get out of them. Scum the water well, and add a little cinnamon, slightly bruised. Put to every gallon 6 ounces of white sugar candy, finely beaten. Scum and strain the water when it is taken off and settled, and put to it the juice of mulberries, and to every gallon the mixture of a pint of white or Rhenish wine. Let them stand in a cask to purge or settle 5 or 6 days, then draw off the wine and keep it cool. This is a very rich cordial. It gives vigour to consumptive bodies, allays the heat of the blood, prevents qualms and sickness in women, makes the body soluble, helps digestion, and eases distempers in the bowels. To make Morella wine. Take 2 gallons of white wine and 20 pounds of morella cherries. Take away the stalks, and so bruise them that the stones may be broken. Then press the juice into the wine. Put mace, cinnamon and nutmeg, each an ounce, well bruised, in a bag. Hang it in the wine when you have put it up in a cask, and it will be a rich drink. To make elderberry wine. Take elderberries when pretty ripe, plucked from the green stalks, what quantity you please, and press them that the juice may freely run from them, which may be done in a cider press or between 2 weighty planks, or for want of this opportunity you may mash them, and then it will run easily. Put the juice in a well seasoned cask, and to every barrel put 3 gallons of water strong of honey boiled in it, and add some ale yeast to make it ferment and work out the grossness of its body. Then, to clarify it, add flour, whites of eggs, and a little fixed nitre. When it is well fermented and grows fine, draw it from the settlings and keep it till spring. Then to every barrel add 5 pounds of its own flowers and as much loaf sugar, and let it stand 7 days, at the end of which it will grow very rich and have a good flavour. Another way to make elderberry wine. When the elderberries are ripe, pick them and put them in a stone jar. Then set them in boiling water, or rather in an oven not over hot, till the jar is as warm as you can well bear to touch it with your hand. Take the berries and strain them through a sieve or coarse cloth, squeezing them hard, and pour the liquor into a kettle. Put it on the fire, let it boil, and put in as many pounds of Lisbon sugar as there are quarts of juice, and scum it often. Then let it settle, pour it off into a jar and cover it close. Many people mix it with raisin wine by putting half a pint of the elder syrup to every gallon of wine. It gives the raisin wine an exquisite fine flavour, equal to any foreign wine whatsoever. It is an excellent febrifuge, cleanses the blood of acidity, venom and putrefaction. It is good in measles, smallpox, swinepox and pestilential diseases. It contributes to rest and takes away the heat that afflicts the brain. To make elderflower wine. To 6 gallons of spring water, put 6 pounds of raisins of the sun cut small and 12 pounds of fine powder sugar. Boil the whole together about an hour and a half. Then take elderflowers when pretty ripe, about half a peck. When the liquor is cold, put in the flowers, about a gill of lemon juice and half the quantity of ale yeast. Cover it up, and after standing 3 days, strain it off, pour it into a cask that is quite sweet and that will hold it with ease. When this is done, put about a wine quart of Rhenish to every gallon of wine, and let the bung be lightly put in for 12 or 14 days. Then stop it down fast, and put it in a cool dry place for 4 or 5 months, till it is quite settled and fine, and bottle it off. To make wine of blackberries, strawberries, or dewberries. Take of the berries in their proper season and moderately ripe, what quantity you please. Press them as other berries. Then boil up water and honey, or water and fine sugar, agreeable to your palate, to a considerable sweetness. When it is well scummed, put the juice in and let it simmer to incorporate it well with the water. Then take it off, let it cool, scum it again, and put it up in a barrel or other close glazed vessel to ferment and settle. To every gallon put half a pint of Malaga, draw it off as clear as possible, bottle it up and keep it cool for use. These liquors are good in fevers, afflictions of the lungs, prevent the infection of pestilential airs, beget a good appetite and help digestion, are excellent in surfeirs and purify the blood. To make wine of apples and pears. Apples must be made first into good cider, by beating and pressing and other methods as directed in treating of those sort of liquors. And to good cider, when you have procured it, put the herb scurly, the quintessence of wine, a little fixed nitre, and a pound of the syrup of honey to a barrel of this cider. Let it work and ferment at spurge holes in the cask 10 days. Or till you find it clear and well settled. Then draw it off, and it will be little inferior to Rhenish in clearness, colour, and taste. To make wine of pears, procure the Tartus Perry, but by no means that which is tart by souring, or given that way, but such as is naturally so. Put into a barrel about 5 ounces of the juice of the herb clary, and the quintessence of wine, and to every barrel a pound or pint of the syrup of blackberries, and, after fermentation and refining, it will be of a curious wine taste, like sherry, and not easily distinguishable but by such as have a very fine taste, or who deal in it. These wines have the nature of cider and perry, though in a higher degree, by the addition and alteration, being cooling, restorative, easing pains in the liver or spleen, cleansing the bowels and creating a good appetite. To make walnut leaf wine. Take 2 pounds of brown sugar and 1 pound of honey to every gallon of water. Boil them half an hour, skim it, and put in the tub to every gallon a handful of leaves. Pour the liquor on, and let it stand all night. Then take out the leaves, and put in half a pint of yeast, and let it work 14 days, which will take off the sweetness. Then stop it up in a cask, and let it stand about 7 months. It is an excellent occasional drink for consumptive persons. To make cherry wine. Take cherries just beginning to be ripe, of the red sort, clear them of the stalks and stones, put them into an earthen glazed pan, and with your clean hands squeeze them to a pulp, or with a wooden ladle or presser, and let them continue 12 hours to ferment. Then put them into a linen cloth, not too fine, and press out the juice with a pressing board or any other convenience. Let the liquor stand till the scum arise, and with your ladle take it clean off. Then pour out the clearer part, by inclination, into a cask, where to each gallon put a pound of the best loaf sugar, and let it ferment and purge 7 or 8 days. When you find it clear, draw it off into lesser casks or bottles. Keep it cool, as other wines, and in 10 or 12 days it will be ripe. This drink's very pleasant and cool in hot weather, cheers the heart, and much enlivens nature in its decay. It is also good against violent pains in the head and swooning fits. To make wine of peaches and apricots. Take peaches, nectarines, etc., when they are full of juice, pare them and take the stones out, then slice them thin, and put about 1 gallon to 2 gallons of water and a quart of white wine. Put them over a fire to simmer gently for a considerable time, till the sliced fruit becomes soft. Then pour off the liquid part to other peaches that have been so treated and bruised, but not heated. Let them stand 12 hours, stirring them sometimes, and then pour out the liquid part, press what remains through a fine hair bag, and put them together into a cask to ferment. Then add 1.5 pounds of loaf sugar to each gallon. Boil well an ounce of cloves in a quart of white wine and add to it, which will give it a curious flavour. Wine of apricots may be made with only bruising and pouring the hot liquor on, not requiring so much sweetening, by reason they are of a more dulcet or luscious quality. To give it a singular flavour, boil an ounce of mace and half an ounce of nutmeg in a quart of white wine, and when the wine is on the ferment, pour the liquid part in hot and hang a bunch of fresh borage, well floured, into the cask by a string at the bung for 3 days. Draw it off and keep it in bottles, which are most proper to preserve these sorts of wines. They are moderately warming and restorative, very good in consumptions, to create an appetite and recover decayed and wasting bodies. They loosen the hardness of the belly and give ease to pains of the stomach. To make quince wine. Gather the quinces when pretty ripe on a dry day. Rub off the down with a clean linen cloth and lay them in hay or straw for 10 days to sweat. Cut them in quarters, take out the core, bruise them well in a mashing tub with a wooden beetle, and squeeze out the liquid part by pressing them in a hair bag gradually in a cider press. Strain this liquor through a fine sieve, warm it gently over a fire and scum it, but do not let it boil. Sprinkle into it loaf sugar reduced to powder, then a gallon of water and a quart of white wine, and boil a dozen or 14 large quinces thinly sliced. Add 2 pounds of fine sugar. Then strain out the liquid part and mingle it with the natural juice of the quinces. Put it into a cask not to fill it, and shake them well together. Let it stand to settle. Put in juice of clary, 1/2 pint to 5 or 6 gallons, and mix it with a little flour and white of eggs. Then draw it off, and if it be not sweet enough, add more sugar, and a quart of the best Malmsey. You may boil 1/4 pound of stoned raisins of the sun and 1/4 ounce of cinnamon in a quart of the liquor, to the consumption of 1/3 part, and straining the liquor, put it into the cask when the wine is upon the ferment. This wine is a good pectoral, cooling and refreshing the vital parts. It is good, moderately taken, in all hot diseases, allays the flushing of the face and St. Anthony's fire, takes away inflammations, and is very beneficial in breakings out, blotches, biles or sores. End of section 24. English Wines, Part 2. To make birch wine. This being a liquor but little known, we shall be as particular as possible in the directions for it. The season for getting the liquor from birch trees sometimes happens the latter end of February or beginning of March, before the leaves shoot out, as the sap begins to rise, and this is according to the mildness or rigour of the weather. And if the time is delayed, the juice will grow too thick to be drawn out, which should be as thin and clear as possible. The method of procuring the juice is by boring holes in the trunk of the tree and fixing faucets made of elder, but care should be taken not to tap it in too many places at once, for fear of hurting the tree. If the tree is large, it may be bored in 5 or 6 places at once, and place bottles to let it drop in. When you have extracted a proper quantity, 3, 4 or 5 gallons from different trees, cork the bottles very close and rosin or wax them till you begin to make your wine, which should be as soon as possible after you have got the juice. As soon as you begin, boil the sap as long as you can take off any scum, and put 4 pounds of fine loaf sugar to every gallon of the juice, and the peel of a lemon cut thin. Then boil it again for near an hour, scumming it all the while, and pour it into a tub. When it is almost cold, work it with a toast spread with yeast, and let it stand 5 or 6 days, stirring it 2 or 3 times a day. Then take a cask that will contain it, and put a lighted match dipped well in brimstone into the cask. Stop it till the match is burnt out, and then tun your wine into it, putting the bung lightly in till it has done working. Bung it very close for about 3 months, and bottle it off for use. It will be ready in a week after it is put in the bottles. It is a very wholesome, pleasant and rich cordial, and very serviceable in curing consumptions, and particularly useful in scorbutic disorders. To make wines of plums, damsons, etc. Take what plums you please, mix those of a sweet taste with an allay of those that are somewhat sour, though they must all be inclining to ripeness. Slit them in halves so that the stones may be taken out, then mash them gently and add a little water and honey. The better to moisten them, boil to every gallon of your pulp a gallon of spring water, and put in a few bay leaves and cloves. Add as much sugar as will sweeten it. Scum off the froth and let it cool, then press the fruit, squeezing out the liquid part. Strain all through a fine strainer, and put the water and juice all together into a cask. Let it stand and ferment 3 or 4 days. Fine it with white sugar, flour and whites of eggs. Draw it off into bottles and cork it up, that the air may not injure it. In 12 days it will be ripe and taste like sherry, or rather a nearer flavour of canary. Damsons may be ordered as other plums, though they produce a tartar wine, more clear and lasting. But do not put so much water to them as to luscious plums, unless you mix some sweet wine with it, as Malaga, Canary, or the like, or infuse raisins of the sun in it, which will give it a rich, mellow taste. These, as other wines made of English fruit, are moderately cooling, purify the blood and cleanse the reins, cause a freeness of urine, and contribute much to soft slumbers and a quiet rest, by sending up gentle refreshing spirits to the brain, which dispel heat and noxious vapours, and put that noble part in a right temperature. To make wine of English figs. Take the large blue figs, pretty ripe, steep them in white wine, having made some slits in them that they may swell and gather in the substance of the wine. Then slice some other figs, and let them simmer over a fire in fair water till they are reduced to a kind of pulp. Strain out the water, pressing the pulp hard, and pour it as hot as possible to those figs that are infused in the wine. Let the quantity be near equal, the water somewhat more than the wine and figs. Having infused 24 hours, mash them well together and draw off all that will run voluntarily. Then press the rest, and if it proves not pretty sweet, add loaf sugar to render it so. Let it ferment, and add a little honey and sugar candy to it, then fine it with whites of eggs and a little isinglass. Draw it off and keep it for use. It is chiefly appropriated to defects of the lungs, helping shortness of breath, removing colds or inflammations of the lungs. It also comforts the stomach and eases pains of the bowels. To make rose wine. Get a glass basin or body, or for want of it, a well glazed earthen vessel, and put into it 3 gallons of rose water, drawn with a cold still. Put into it a convenient quantity of rose leaves. Cover it close and put it for an hour in a kettle or cauldron of water, heating it over the fire to take out the whole strength and tincture of the roses, and when cold, press the rose leaves hard into the liquor and steep fresh ones in, repeating it till the liquor has got a full strength of roses. Then to every gallon of liquor add 3 pounds of loaf sugar. Stir it well that it may melt and disperse in every part. Then put it into a cask or other convenient vessel to ferment. And to make it do so the better, add a little fixed nitre and flour with 2 or 3 whites of eggs. Let it stand to cool about 30 days, and it will be ripe and have a curious flavour, having the whole strength and scent of the roses in it. And you may add, to meliorate it, some wine and spices, as your taste or inclination leads you. By this way of infusion, wine of carnations, clove gillyflowers, violets, primroses, or any flower having a curious scent may be made, to which, to prevent repetition, you are referred. Wines thus made are not only pleasant in taste, but rich and medicinal, being excellent for strengthening the heart, refreshing the spirits, and gently cooling the body, making it lenitive, and so purges the first digestion of phlegm and even choler. It abates the heat of the fever, quenches thirst, mitigates the inflammation of the entrails, and on many occasions serves for a good counter poison. To make cowslip wine. Put 5 pounds of loaf sugar to 4 gallons of fair water. Simmer them over a fire half an hour to well dissolve the sugar, and when it is taken off and cold, put in half a peck of cowslip flowers, clean picked and gently bruised. Then put in 2 spoonfuls of new ale yeast and a pound of syrup of lemons beaten with it, with a lemon peel or 2. Pour the whole into a well seasoned cask or vessel. Let them stand close stopped for 3 days, that they may ferment well. Then put in some juice of cowslips and give it a convenient space to work. When it has stood a month, draw it off into bottles, putting a little lump of loaf sugar into each, by which means you may keep it well the space of a year. In like manner, you may make wine of such other flowers as are of a pleasant taste and scent, as oxlips, jessamine, peach blooms, comfrey, scabions, featherfew, fumitory, and many more, as your fancy and taste may lead you. This wine, moderately drank, much helps the palsy, cramp, convulsions, and all other diseases of the nerves and sinews. It also eases pains of the joints and gout, and greatly contributes to the curing of ruptures. To make scurvy grass wine. Take the best large scurvy grass tops and leaves, in May, June or July. Bruise them well in a stone mortar, put them in a well glazed earthen vessel, and sprinkle them over with some powder of crystal of tartar. Then smear them over with virgin honey, and, being covered close, let it stand 24 hours. Then set water over a gentle fire, putting to every gallon 3 pints of honey, and when the scum rises, take it off and let it cool. Put your bruised scurvy grass into a barrel and pour the liquor to it, setting the vessel conveniently endways with a tap at the bottom, and when it has been infused 24 hours, draw off the liquor and strongly press the juice and moisture out of the herb into the barrel or vessel, and put the liquor up again. Then put a little new ale yeast to it, and let it ferment 3 days, covering the place of the bung or vent with a piece of bread spread over with mustard seed downward in a cool place, and let it continue till it is fine and drinks brisk. Then draw off the finest part, leaving only the dregs behind. Add more herb and ferment it with whites of eggs, flour and fixed niter verjuice, or the juice of green grapes, if they are to be had. To which add 6 pounds of the syrup of mustard, all mixed and well beaten together, to refine it down, and it will drink brisk but not very pleasant. It helps digestion, warms cold stomachs, carries off phlegm, purifies the blood, purges out salt, watery humours, cleanses the bowels from cold sliminess, eases pains in the limbs, head, heart and stomach, especially those proceeding from scorbutic humours, etc. To make wine of mint, balm, etc. Distill the herb in the cold still, add honey to it, work as in scurvy grass. Then refine it and work it down by due proportion of its own syrup. By this means the wine will become very fragrant and contain the whole virtue of the herb. Wormwood wine, wine of rue, carduus and such strong physical herbs may be made by infusion only, in small white wines, cider, perry or the like, adding a little sweets to them, that they may be more agreeable to the taste. That of black currants may be made as of other currants, and is very useful in all families. Wines made of mint, balm, wormwood, rue, etc. resist pestilential air, are good in agues and cold diseases, prevent fits of the mother and agues, ease pains in the joints and sinews, cleanse the blood, and frequently prevent apoplexies, epilepsies, and the like. They not only contain the virtues of the herb, but greatly strengthen and revive the decay of nature. To make orange wine. Put 12 pounds of fine sugar and the whites of 8 eggs well beaten into 6 gallons of spring water. Let it boil an hour, scumming it all the time. Take it off, and when it is pretty cool, put in the juice of 50 Seville oranges and 6 spoonfuls of good ale yeast, and let it stand 2 days. Then put it in another vessel with 2 quarts of Rhenish wine and the juice of 12 lemons. You must let the juice of lemons and wine and 2 pounds of double refined sugar stand close covered 10 or 12 hours before you put it into the vessel to your orange wine, and scum off the seeds before you put it in. The lemon peels must be put in with the oranges. Half the rinds must be put into the vessel, and it must stand 10 or 12 days before it is fit to bottle. To make sage wine. Boil 26 quarts of spring water a quarter of an hour, and when it is blood warm, put into it 25 pounds of Malaga raisins, picked, rubbed and shred, with near half a bushel of red sage shred, and a porringer of ale yeast. Stir all well together, and let it stand in a tub, covered warm, 6 or 7 days, stirring it once a day. Then strain it off, and put it in a runlet. Let it work 3 or 4 days, and then stop it up. When it has stood 6 or 7 days, put in a quart or two of Malaga sack, and when it is fine, bottle it. To make sycamore wine. Take 2 gallons of the sap of sycamore and boil it half an hour. Then add to it 4 pounds of fine powder sugar. Beat the whites of 3 eggs to a froth and mix them with the liquor, but if it be too hot it will poach the eggs. Scum it well and boil it half an hour, then strain it through a hair sieve and let it stand till next day. Then pour it clear from the sediment, put half a pint of good yeast to every 12 gallons. Cover it close up with blankets till it is white over, after which put it into the barrel and leave the bunghole open till it has done working. Close it well up, let it stand 3 months and bottle it. The 5th part of the sugar must be loaf, and if you like raisins, they are a great addition to the wine. To make turnip wine. Take a good number of turnips, pare them, put them into a cider press and squeeze out all the juice. To every gallon of juice, take 3 pounds of lump sugar. Have a vessel ready just big enough to hold the juice, and put your sugar into a vessel. To every gallon of juice add half a pint of brandy. Pour in the juice and lay something over the bung for a week to see if it works. If it does, you must not bring it down till it has done working, then stop it close for 3 months, and draw it off into another vessel. When it is fine, bottle it off. To imitate Cyprus wine. To 9 gallons of water, put 9 quarts of the juice of white elderberries, which has been pressed gently from the berries with the hand and passed through a sieve without bruising the kernels of the berries. Add to every gallon of liquor 3 pounds of Lisbon sugar. To the whole quantity put 1.5 ounces of ginger sliced, and 3/4 of an ounce of cloves. Then boil this near an hour, taking off the scum as it rises, and pour the whole to cool in an open tub, and work it with ale yeast spread upon a toast of white bread for 3 days, and then tun it into a vessel that will just hold it, adding about 1.5 pounds of raisins of the sun split to lye in liquor till you draw it off, which should not be till the wine is fine, which you will find in January. It is so much like the fine rich wine brought from Cyprus in its colour and flavour that it has deceived the best judges. To make gillyflower wine. To 3 gallons of water put 6 pounds of the best powder sugar. Boil the sugar and water together for the space of half an hour. Keep scumming it as the scum rises. Let it stand to cool. Beat up 3 ounces of syrup of betony with a large spoonful of ale yeast. Put it into the liquor, let them infuse and work together 3 days, covered with a cloth. Strain it, put it into a cask, and let it settle for 3 or 4 weeks, when bottle it. To make mountain wine. Take fine Malaga raisins, pick all the stalks out, chop them very small, and put 10 pounds of them to every 2 gallons of spring water. Let them steep 3 weeks, stirring them often. Then squeeze out the liquor and put it into a vessel that will just hold it, but do not stop it till it has done hissing. Then bung it up close, and it will be fit for use in 6 months. To make orange wine with raisins. Take 30 pounds of new Malaga raisins, pick them clean and chop them small. Then take 20 large Seville oranges, 10 of which pare as thin as for preserving. Boil about 8 gallons of soft water till a 1/3 part be consumed. let it cool a little, then put 5 gallons of it hot upon your raisins and orange peel. Stir it well together, cover it up, and when it is cold, let it stand 5 days, stirring it up once or twice every day. Then pass it through a hair sieve, and with a spoon press it as dry as you can. Put it in a rundlet fit for it, and add to it the rinds of the other 10 oranges, cut as thin as the first. Then make a syrup of the juice of 20 oranges with a pound of white sugar. It must be made the day before you turn it up. Stir it well together and stop it up close. Let it stand 2 months to clear, then bottle it up. It will keep 3 years and is better for keeping. To make Smyrna raisin wine. Put 24 gallons of water to 100 pounds of raisins. After letting it stand about 14 days, put it into your cask. When it has remained there 6 months, put a gallon of brandy to it, and when it is fine, bottle it. To make an excellent English wine. Take currants, both red and white, gooseberries, red and green, mulberries, raspberries, strawberries of different sorts, cherries, but not little black ones, and grapes, red and white. All the fruits must be full ripe, and take an equal quantity of each. Throw them into a tub and bruise them lightly. Take golden pippins and nonpareils, chop and bruise them well, and mix them with the others. To every 2 gallons of fruit, put 1 gallon of spring water, and boil it all together twice a day for a fortnight. Then press it through a hair bag into a vessel, and have ready a wine hogshead. Put into it 100 raisins of the sun with their stalks, fill it with the strained juice, lay the bung on lightly, and when it has done hissing and working, put in a gallon of the best French brandy, and stop the vessel close. Let it stand 6 months, then peg it and see if it be fine. If it is, bottle it. If not, stop it for 6 months longer, and then bottle it. The longer it is kept, the better it will be. It is necessary you put in bay leaves with your brandy. To make bitter wine. Take 2 quarts of strong white wine, infuse in it 1 dram of rhubarb, 1 dram and a half of gentian root, Roman wormwood, tops of carduus, centauri and chamomile flowers, of each 3 drams. Yellow peel of oranges, half an ounce. Nutmegs, mace and cloves, of each 1 dram. Infuse all 48 hours. Strain it and drink a glass an hour before dinner. To make mead. Having got 13 gallons of water, put 30 pounds of honey to it. Boil and scum it well. Then take rosemary, thyme, bay leaves and sweet briar, 1 handful altogether. Boil it an hour. Then put it into a tub with 2 or 3 handfuls of ground malt. Stir it till it is blood warm. Then strain it through a cloth and put it into a tub again. Cut a toast round a quartern loaf and spread it over with good ale yeast, and put it into your tub. And when the liquor is quite over with the yeast, put it into your vessel. Then take of cloves, mace and nutmegs 1 ounce and a half, of ginger sliced 1 ounce. Bruise the spice, tie it up in a rag and hang it in the vessel, then stop it up close for use. Another way to make mead. Take a gallon of honey, 8 gallons of water, 1/4 pound of ginger sliced and 6 whites of eggs beat with the shells. Put all these into a convenient vessel and let them boil till 1/4 part of the liquor be wasted, scumming it all the time. To each gallon of water put a handful of rosemary. When your liquor is sufficiently boiled, put in the remainder of your ingredients. And when all is boiled, strain your liquor through a hair sieve and let it stand till it is thoroughly cold. Then put a pint of ale yeast into the vessel and put in the liquor. If the weather be cold, let it stand 2 or 3 days before you bottle it. Another way to make mead. Take the honey out and add as much water to the honeycombs as they will sweeten. Let it stand to mix, boil it well and scum it. When an egg will swim at the top, it will be sufficiently boiled. Then put it into a wooden vessel, let it stand till cold and bottle it in stone bottles. You may boil it either with lemon, thyme, rosemary or cowslips. To make Frontignac mead. Take 50 pounds of honey, 50 pounds of Belvedere raisins and 50 gallons of water. Boil these about 15 minutes, keeping it well scummed. Put it into the working tub and put to it a pint of ale yeast, letting it work till the yeast begins to fall. When taken clear off, tun it with the raisins and throw into the cask a quart of white elderflowers. Take care to attend it in change of weather. Let it continue in the cask 12 months and then fine it down with wine fining and bottle it off. To make cowslip mead. Take 15 gallons of water and 30 pounds of honey and boil them together till 1 gallon is wasted. Skim it and take it off the fire. Have ready 16 lemons cut in halves. Put a gallon of the liquor to the lemons and the rest into a tub with 7 packs of cowslips. Let them stand all night, then put in the liquor with the lemons, 8 spoonfuls of new yeast and a handful of sweet briar. Stir them all well together and let it work 3 or 4 days. Then strain it and put it in your cask, and in 6 months' time you may bottle it. General observations. Your vessel should be quite dry and previously rinsed with brandy and well bunged or closed up as soon as the wines have done fermenting. As it greatly depends on the flavour of the water you use, in order to have good tasted wines you must be careful to get the best. The water in London will not be proper unless put for some time in earthen vessels to settle itself. Fine spring water is most proper if it can be readily got. Be careful not to let it stand too long before you get it cold, and remember to put in the yeast in time, or else your wine will fret in the cask and be prevented fining. If you let it stand too long in the tub while working, it will lose the natural sweetness and flavour of the fruits and flowers it is made from. Lastly, let your fruit, berries, etc. be always gathered quite dry, and in general when full ripe. End of section 25.